Hello, my name is Mike Cameron. I'm here to present my paper, Trust. A critical factor in your team's success is to build and sustain an environment of trust across all aspects of your business. If you'd like a copy of the paper, it will be made available at the end of the conference. However, I'm actually here to make a PowerPoint presentation that I hope will offer you some critical pointers and some tools to support you as the leader and to help members of your team as you all move forward. So how about we get into it? I've split my paper into two parts. In the first part, we're going to be looking at trustworthiness, priming for trust, and coaching your team. For trustworthiness, I'm looking at three items there. A modified trust equation from Green Meister. 2, the trust matrix from Stephen M.R. Covey. And a graphic that I've created called Trust Affects Perception. We'll then move on to priming for trust based on Judith E. Glass's Conversational Essentials. And finally, in this segment, we'll look at coaching your team based on how well you're going to effectively apply the skills that you've learned from the previous two items. So let's move on. In the second part, we're going to look at and round off very briefly conversational essentials. What really are they? Emotional intelligence, what do I mean by that? And management competency, or what I call the street smarts of leadership. So in trustworthiness, which is key to your credibility and your effectiveness as a leader, what do we mean by the word trust? The word trust is used to interpret what people say. It describes behaviors. It's used to decide if one feels comfortable sharing information with the other person. It indicates whether one feels that other people have our interests at heart. After a great deal of research during the 1990s, Green and Meister created a model which they termed the trust equation. There's a brief explanation of their work within my paper, together with a link to their website, which I would encourage you to visit and explore. However, although the essence of the model that I'm using here today is basically unchanged, I've applied local terminology to make it more suitable for an Australian audience. What do I mean by that? Well, TQ equals B plus D plus R over SI. What on earth does that mean? B means believability, the quality of being able to be believed, your credibility. D means dependability, the quality of being trustworthy and reliable. R equals relatability, the quality of being easy to understand and feel connected to. And self-interest, which is pretty obvious, is all about one's personal interest and advantage, especially when pursued without regard to how other people are working or acting. All of that equation creates what's called a trust quotient, TQ, and it's a measure of how we look at an individual's trustworthiness. People rarely give over their trust to a company or business. However, they do tend to assess the situation when, right or wrong, they decide either trust or not trust the other person. Many of us are quick to make a judgment based on our gut feeling, whereas the assessment of trustworthiness really requires objective and non-emotive ratings for each of the 4 variables in this equation. What we should be looking for is a high level of believability, dependability, and reliability, and a low self-interest score to establish a credible TQ or a trust quotient. The rating process can be fun. Now, I today am only using a relatively simple scale of 1 to 5, but there's nothing stopping you using a scale of 1 to 50 or whatever you decide, as long as you relate it to the whole of the equation. The higher the score that you give each of the 3 variables on the top line of the equation show how comfortable you feel about the person themselves, and increases the value of trust. However, because self-interest is the most critical of the variables, it's important to understand that the rating process is totally reversed, with a high number indicating that the person is most focused on themselves. In other words, the more comfortable you feel about the person's trustworthiness, the way they relate to you, etc., the lower the rating you will give self-interest. As a practical example, you may remember a recent TV ad about a couple looking for a home mortgage. They were really excited. They were going to get the mortgage. The guy they'd been working with was really pretty good to them. And he came over as probably 5 for believability is excellent, 4 for dependability. And relatability, they didn't really need to relate that much to him. They just felt more his believability and his dependability. They gave him a 3. So it gave a total score of 12 out of a possible maximum of 15 on the top line. And at the time, they felt pretty comfortable with the guy's self-interest. They felt he was focused on them, and so they gave him a score of 2. And in this particular occasion, that gave an overall result of 12 divided by 2 equals 6, meaning that the customers felt reasonably comfortable with this individual, given that it was a commercial transaction. However, suddenly he was counting a fistful of dollars, his commission. How would they have related to his self-interest now? Well, let's assume that the couple assessed the financial advisor's self-interest as a 5, totally interested in himself and his commission. The result of the TQ suddenly goes right the way down to 2.4. So with the highest possible TQ rating being 15, any score at 5 or less means questionable to low trustworthiness. And in this particular case, the TV couple certainly were not interested in taking up his offer to provide them with additional services, having now lost their previous feelings of trust for this man. Can you see how valuable this particular tool is? In my own case, I know my family quite frequently use it to do a quick evaluation, particularly when they're talking to salespeople. Let's move on to Stephen Covey's Trust Matrix. This comes from Stephen's book, The Speed of Trust, which I highly recommend. Covey breaks trust into 2 key components: character and competence. Let's dig into each of them, starting with character, which he describes and divides into 2 particular areas or arms: intent and integrity. Covey suggests that intent should represent your approach to caring for people, your transparency, and your openness. All the things we were talking about earlier on in communication. And then look at the integrity of your character, your honesty, your fairness, and your authenticity. On the other arm of the matrix, Covey has competency, which he further divides into capability and results. He breaks capability into skills, knowledge, and experience. And Covey contends that the focus on these three transactional measures will lead to the achievement of your results and highlight your record, your credibility, and your performance. Now, I'd like just to add the point there. If you look at the competence side of things and you go to results, those results are really created by your ability to motivate and have your team end up getting those results for you. You can't get those results just by yourself. You need people. So a prerequisite of effective leadership is to become a lifelong learner, constantly honing your skills, your knowledge, and your lived experience. I believe that Stephen Covey's trust matrix is a simple yet effective tool for you to rate your own trustworthiness from a team leadership viewpoint. It's something you can just check. How am I going on these particular points that are shown there in green? My graphic, How Trust Alters Perceptions, illustrates a number of critical aspects associated with managing yourself and your interaction with individuals and members of your team. Let's have a look at each of them, starting from distrust at the top left and moving from there to the bottom of the diagram. When we experience feelings of distrust, our perceptions of the situation can be one of fear, anger, and thoughts of fight or flight. We tend to hear ourselves being told what to do, with demands frequently being made of us without explanation. So our hot buttons are pushed, and the limbic brain, the emotional memory center, and the associated amygdala, the primitive brain, become activated and generate the body's fear and stress responses, as well as playing a pivotal role in reinforcing and triggering some long forgotten memories. Hormones such as cortisol, adrenaline, and testosterone are released, which produces anxiety and a heightened awareness of our situation, coupled with an urgent need to focus on our own self-preservation. However, when we consider trust at the top right of the graphic, our perceptions are very different. We're willing to engage with others, to co-create and listen. We tend to ask more questions and show interest in others. We become more innovative and empowering as we use the executive brain, the prefrontal cortex, which helps our body generate the happiness hormone, oxytocin, and the neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin, creating an overall feeling of well-being and social bonding. So as a leader, what are the key takeaways that you will get from this diagram? My hope is that these two will resonate with you. Firstly, review your communication style, your tone, and your agility. Talk less, ask questions, and listen more. And secondly, review your leadership style, your focus, and your leadership agility. Move from focusing on yourself and actively seek the input and views of others. Being open to influence. Connect without judgment, engaging and listening to what others are saying, and even thinking rather than preparing for what we want to say next. Priming for trust. Creating a healthy mental, emotional, and conversational environment that activates higher levels of partnering. Asking questions for which you have no answer. Being in a mindset of discovery and co-creating a space for sharing and discovering. Listen to connect, not judge, confirm, or reject. Focusing attention on the other person, opening yourself up to connect to the other person's aspirations and their view of the world in a non-judgmental way. Sustaining conversational agility, moving in and out of conversation with ease and agility. Talking at a level that your audience understands, not using fancy words, double meanings, literally being open, transparent at their level. Create new conversational space that elevates trust and invites wisdom and insight to emerge. Double clicking. Uncover and explore what's in the other person's mind. Gain clarity and deeper understanding of the other person's perspective, their deeply held beliefs, and their unique points of view. Going back to priming for trust, if you have a look at the colored capitals at the beginning of each word, they spell trust. These are 5 words that I would love you to think about, and if you like, class this as the foundation of where you're going. Trust is when we believe others will deliver on their promises. Distrust is when we doubt others are telling the truth and assume that they will not deliver on their promises. Priming for trust enables us to work as partners and opens us up to achieve higher levels of success with others. Trust involves actively bringing the following behaviors into our interactions with others. T, transparency. R, the quality of the relationship. U, understanding, ensuring that we do understand where the other person's coming from. Sharing success and telling the truth. We'll move on to coaching, and I'm going to ask you a straightforward question. Are you a taskmaster or a coach? Which one are you? Great leaders coach their people. And according to a recent survey, coaching is the top desired skill for frontline managers. Coaching is the most critical skill that every leader needs to acquire in order to ensure their team's empowerment and advance their own career in the process. An effective coach, particularly a coach who's interested in leading through change, transaction, and empowerment, knows how to say less. And when they do talk, ask questions for which they have no answers. I frequently use this coaching model, and I think that you'll find it of real value. It's showing you 4 quadrants: coaching, being a consultant, being a facilitator, and being a trainer. And it'll be important for you to evaluate when and how to move into each of those quadrants if you need to. Right in the center, and most importantly, is you use effective communication. You talk to the person's language, the person's understanding. Sometimes as a coach, you will find that a person doesn't know what the person doesn't know. And you need, in those cases, to either be the subject matter expert that can explain where you're wanting to take the person, or you're a trainer where you can actually say, this is what I would like you to do. I'll show you how to do it. Make certain they can do it. In past language, train the trainer type discussions. Sometimes, and particularly in group meetings, you may like to help somebody or the team get to the place that you would like them to get to by facilitating open discussion with the team. You don't always need to be the person specifically coaching or guiding them into the way forward. What I would say to you is really understand the value of applying the skills necessary to actually become an effective coach. Priming for trust, the foundation of the 6 conversational essentials, came from the book Conversational Intelligence: How Great Leaders Build Trust and Get Exceptional Results, which Judith E. Glasser wrote in 2014. It's a book I highly recommend. It's an amazing body of work. I also recommend that you have a look at a YouTube video by Daniel Goleman called Strategies to Become More Emotionally Intelligent. Daniel Goleman created the term emotional intelligence in the 1990s when he identified 5 key activities that were important. 2 of them are intrapersonal: self-awareness, being able to understand when your hot buttons are being triggered, and self-regulation, creating strategies to deal with those hot button reactions. He also identified 3 interpersonal intelligences: motivation, empathy, and people skills. With motivation, he wanted us to understand that motivation is only internal to another person. You can create short-term motivation with the carrot or the stick. You can give somebody an incentive, or you can push them, bully them into doing something. Both are short-term, and only through creating an environment of motivation will people actually become innovative and feel that they're empowered. He asked us to think about empathy as being able to understand where somebody's coming from, to shine a light on where they are, rather than in fact joining them in whatever they are dealing with. In other words, when you sympathize with somebody, you actually are adding to wherever they're coming from. Empathy allows you to give them space to get over and deal with whatever their own issues are. And finally, he talked about people skills, what we would now refer to as conversational flexibility, being agile with people, being able to put yourself in a situation where other people feel comfortable with you. In 1995, Gareth R. Jones wrote a book, Organizational Theory: The Planning, Organizing, Leading, and Controlling of Resources to Achieve Goals Effectively and Efficiently, in which he demonstrated how to use planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And he offered a number of fairly academic but very detailed models. However, a decade ago, whilst teaching students undertaking a Diploma of Management program where management and leadership competencies and their different skill sets were often debated, especially as we reviewed and discussed Jones's academic diagrams and explanations. It became evident that I needed to better show the practical application of this important management concept. After giving the challenge serious review, I created a revised model which now includes 4 behavioral competencies: conceptual and strategic, that relate to thinking and evaluating, and tactical and operational, that relate to adapting and doing, and management being divided into 2 key accountabilities: leadership and supervision. In my model's left-hand column, planning and leading, as defined within Jones's book, requires keen conceptual and thinking skills and competencies, whereas organizing and controlling rely heavily upon tactical and operational thinking. I contend that regardless of a person's management position, each of the 4 focus points and their associated behavioral competencies will be required at some level and at some time during their decision-making role in the business. Therefore, as a coaching facilitating tool, this versatile model has quickly and clearly illustrated its value from a team leading viewpoint through to, obviously, when you're talking to executives and business leaders. One final comment, I will explain the reason why I've added the term monitor to the term control that was used by Jones. Obviously, controlling a diverse range of activities, not just people, is a key management accountability. However, in my experience, effective leaders tend to monitor their people's performance, whereas less empathetic managers tend to micromanage or control their areas of influence. In conclusion, I hope that you now have a clearer understanding about how to build and sustain an environment of trust across all aspects of your business. Implementation of the following takeaways are essential if you wish to support your team's future success and advance your own career. The 6 points are: establish trust and encourage trustworthiness. Utilize the 6 conversational essentials, specifically prime for trust. Apply emotional intelligence and resilience. Use open, transparent, and effective communication. Become a great coach. And finally, enjoy your leadership role and keep learning. Thank you.